Alright, this is basic graphing lines. This is not only important to watch when you're just learning how to graph lines, but even towards the middle and the end of the year, once you're wrapping it up. This is something very basic that's very, very easy to forget. So I recommend that maybe every few weeks, just take a few moments and watch at least one of these examples. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'm going to do all three graphs. I'm going to graph them all on the same coordinate plane, but I'm going to go ahead and use a corresponding color. So for the first one, I'm going to go ahead and use green. The formula is in y equals mx plus b form. It always should be before you graph. It's typically, in my opinion, the easier form. So what you do first is you graph the y-intercept. That's your b, that's your +4. So that means on my graph I always start at the origin. And it's the y-intercept, so I'm going to use the y-axis. I'm going to go up 4. And I'm going to go ahead and plot a point right there. Next, from that point, I graph my slope. It's -2/3. The slope is always rise over run, and when it's a negative, you go down. So I'm going to go down 2 to the right 3, always run to the right. Down 2 to the right 3. I like to draw a minimum of 3 points on a line just to make sure I have a more accurate graph. The more points you have, the more accurate your graph is going to be. So it was kind of hard for you to see me pointing to how I did my slope. I'm going to go ahead and use the pointer now that the graph is all out. It's -2/3 because it's negative. I'm going to go down 2. And we always run to the right, always go to the right. That makes it much easier to remember. So I start from my y-intercept, I go down 2/3, down 2/3. Let's go ahead and do the next example. The next example, slightly different. We have a y-intercept that is negative. So same thing, we're going to start from the origin, and we're going to go down 5 spaces. That's going to bring me about right here. And I also threw a curveball on this one because here our slope is a whole number. Now typically we don't like fractions, but in slope it's easier to have a fraction because it's always rise over run. Whenever you're given a whole number, what you have to do is put it over 1 to make it easier. That way you have your rise and your run. So from this point right here, because this is a +4, I'm going to go up 4/1. And I'm going to do that twice. I'm going to go up 4/1, up 4/1, and then this is my line. Let's go ahead and look at this final one. Notice how it's not in the same form. Typically, it is easier to go ahead and change it into y equals mx plus b form, but there's been a push to not do that. So I'm going to show you how to graph a line that is not given in slope-intercept form. This is actually called standard form. You have x and y on the same side, and it equals a number. And some books are different, but the way I was taught, your x value always had to be positive, and you have to have only whole numbers in front. So it depends on the book that you use, it depends on who you learn from, but that's the way that I learned it. That's what makes this standard form for me. So one way that I've seen it done is if you plug in 0 for x. So you have 0 minus 5y equals 10. You want to get y by itself, so you divide both sides by -5. So y equals -2. Since your 0 was x, you could put that in a point, coordinate point. That coordinate point, if I were to graph it, is over 0, down 2. So that point is right here. So for the first part, I plugged in 0 for x. Next I'll plug in 0 for y, so that'll give me 2x minus 0 equals 10. You can get x by itself by dividing both sides by 2. X equals 5. And since my x equals 5, I know my y is 0 because I plugged in 0 for y. And that point is over 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 0. So that's going to be right here. So what we did just now is we found the x and y intercepts. Then what we did was we graphed the x and y intercepts. And even though I encourage 3 or more points, this is another acceptable way to draw the line of your graph.